that I think that she spoke about was the death penalty. New Jersey has a history of the death penalty. I was transferred to Trenton State Prison for lockup. And New Jersey has what's called the death house, which is right next to the lockup area where I was housed at. The death house was where they kept all their death row prisoners. Mudman, Jerry Rose, there's so many, Ambrose Harris. So they were all there, waiting to be executed. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, in my experience with them, they're very dangerous individuals in their own right because of the stances they took and their attitude. So a lot of them I met on death row were really serious guys. New Jersey history of death row, however, took a big turn when they wanted to outlaw death penalty in New Jersey, because New Jersey was vigilant about execution. And first, it took years, so they had signed a moratorium to freeze death penalties. For years, they wouldn't execute. For years, these guys sat on death row waiting to die, waiting for the decision, waiting for this exploratory committee to complete their investigation on the severity of the death penalty in New Jersey. Eventually, because it was ruled to be cruel and unusual under the 8th Amendment, because of the method in which they were using to execute, they banned the death penalty in New Jersey. Which a lot of guys on death row were just, their sentences were commuted to life sentences. They were no longer, the certificate for death penalty was withdrawn and their sentence was commuted to a life sentence, which is a social death. You know, that's just saying life in jail is a social death, which what I was threatened with, in my case, to plead guilty to a crime I didn't commit. One of the things I went and talked about in my case, some of the key factors that I spoke about were ineffective assistance of counsel for my public defender, prosecutorial misconduct, judicial misconduct, administrative misconduct. All these things were in collaboration to put me in a position of a predicament to plead guilty to a crime I didn't commit. Ineffective assistance of counsel, my attorney is the one who coerced me to plead guilty. I never met the prosecutor. My attorney brought me all the false information, told me that they had witnesses against me, waiting to testify against me, which turned out to be totally fabricated. My attorney told me that all the warrants that they received against me were valid warrants, and they were received through proper investigation from police who wrote fabricated police reports. All the police reports in my case were fabricated. None of it happened. I tried my hardest to say it's not me, I'm innocent. Because the police wrote this report and put a stamp of approval on it and was able to get a judge to sign off on to get warrants on this police report, what I said didn't matter. My attorney is the one who brought me all this false information. Secondly, the second big, the most important, and the one key factor in my case that I fight against today is prosecutorial misconduct. Prosecutorial misconduct is rampant in the criminal justice system. The plea agreement is 95 to 96% high in the criminal justice system. That is the cornerstone of the system, plea agreements. Only 4% of people go to trial. That's horrible statistic. You're talking about this large amount of people who voluntarily give up their rights to trial because of a systematic set of tactics that they use for the prosecutor's office to coerce you into pleading guilty, even if you're guilty. They give you these plea agreements to provide you what you may perceive as a leniency to forfeit your right to trial, your Sixth Amendment right to trial. The reason they do this is not because they're trying to seek justice. One, plea agreements being a high statistic, such horrible 90 in the 90 percentile, breaks down the cost of judicial costs. It's economical. Imagine if 95% of people went to trial. You know how much it would cost per trial, picking a jury, experts, attorneys, court staff. Each case costing in the thousands and thousands of dollars, it would collapse the system. So they had to generate a better process in order to keep the wheels of what they call social justice moving forward. So the plea agreement process became the cornerstone of the system. Some tactics they use, I read a book called Prosecution Under Watch. One of the tactics it talked about even in the new tactic they use in drug arrests. What they do is, now, if you're arrested for this offense, for drug offense, what they do is they overcharge you. They charge you with possession with intent to distribute, possession with intent to distribute 1,000 feet, possession with intent to distribute 1,000 feet in this zone, knowing that only one of these charges should apply anyway. And then they come to you and say, if you plead guilty to this offense, we'll drop 5 charges. So you think you're getting some favor. Oh, they're gonna drop 5 charges. If I tell you, okay, let me plead guilty. Only realistically, the evidence, they was only to prove that one anyway. But the coercive tactics that they use in the plea agreement process is extremes. The problem with the plea agreement process, in which I and myself teamed up with Judge Ronkoff, who is a federal district judge in New York, we both shared a similar concept in the plea agreement process. What is lacking in the plea agreement process to myself, him, and others is a third party. It should not be the public defenders against the prosecutors. The public defender who's understaffed, under-budgeted, overworked, caseload overwhelming, compared to a prosecutor whose budget is overwhelming. Staff is great, they get the best attorneys. They have all the great experts. It's like a David versus Goliath relationship. The key thing about the prosecutor office, what creates prosecutorial misconduct, is because they have complete immunity, both in the individual and their professional capacity. You can't sue a prosecutor. You can't do anything to them. You can't penalize them. They have some limited restrictions or placed on them from the Bar Association. However, you cannot do anything to penalize a prosecutor for withholding exculpatory evidence. In my case, exculpatory evidence is evidence in your behalf. Like I explained to the other class, only 2 forms of evidence: exculpatory and inculpatory. Inculpatory evidence is evidence that's against you. Exculpatory evidence is evidence in your behalf. That's the only 2 forms of evidence. So it may be circumstantial, direct, indirect, hearsay, but either way, it either falls in your behalf or against you. In that process, prosecutors can withhold exculpatory evidence for years. For my case, they withheld evidence for like 9, close to 10 years, saying they lost it, which was the material I needed to prove my innocence through DNA, claiming that it was gone. But even in spite of laws that have been created, one case, Maryland versus Brady, which is called the Brady violation. In prosecutorial misconduct, the key case is called the Brady violation. The Brady violation, in which case they set 4-pronged tests to determine if a prosecutor withheld evidence, if this evidence was able to influence a jury and to rule another way, if this evidence was able to sway the court, if this evidence would have shocked the conscience of society, that his innocence, and if this evidence was found outside of the record. These prongs were to govern the prosecutor. They don't care about this. They have more authority at this point than even judges because they have no oversight. I teamed up with another organization, along with the Innocent Project, who is renowned for fighting against prosecutorial misconduct. There's another organization I teamed up with called It Can Happen to You, which is an organization that's based in Albany. This organization is the first organization to legislate a bill to the state Senate to create the first oversight committee for prosecutors. They need prosecutorial oversight. There's no other state in the United States that has any committee that monitors the activities of prosecutors. They have no one to answer to. This bill, when we first went to the court, the first year, we were in and out of Senate floor. I met with senators, congressmen and women, told them my story about being wrongfully convicted, spent 18 years innocent, how the prosecutor withheld DNA, went and tried to and shared with everyone. We had great success the first year, made it all the way to the Senate floor, met with council, Governor Cuomo's council, great success. Only thing the problem was, our bill came behind the rent control bill. Now the rent control bill in New York is massive. Any other bill that comes behind the rent control bill is dead. So the bill got killed. The Senate went into recession, it became a lame duck session. No more bills are being heard. So we had to go back and start from the beginning and file over. Just to get some monitoring on prosecutors so that they could be reined in. Now, the problem with, I think, and with, like I said, when the judge said, we need a third party. We need someone to arbitrate. This is what we're saying. To come in and say, you know what? You sit here, public defender. You sit here, prosecutor. Put all the evidence on the table. Let me review it. If we feel you're withholding anything, then we're going to penalize you or we're going to share this with the public defender because most of the time they don't share it with the attorney. In New York, the prosecutor don't even have to give the attorney no discoveries. You don't have to give them any information to the day of trial, you know, and they call that the ambush approach. That's in New York, it's called the ambush. So you have an office that's completely overwhelmed, out of hand right now, in my opinion. Now, police report, and I say, is as a result of this is how it works. Police officers, I'm going to put this on the record. I'm not an anti-law enforcement. I believe that you need law enforcement. I've been in prison. There's some people in there that I'm glad they locked up. So I'm feel saying that if my family, my loved one, my people, someone need to call somebody, if I'm not there or someone not there to come and protect them, I want and proud and happy to have someone that get a call that's going to come who and professionally have. So I am not anti-law. I believe society needs rules, society needs regulations. I am not. I am anti-corrupt police. I am anti-bad cop. I'm anti that. So in saying that, the problem with the criminal justice system today, one of the key problems is law enforcement, they can write police reports, right, and it's unchallenged. There's no barrier to challenge it. Now, I try to speak to you, a lot of young youth. I'm from Newark, New Jersey, Brick City. It's everywhere where I'm from, everywhere. Bah, bah, bah. It's always going down. But the youth aren't really like that. A lot of the youth are just trying to make it, trying to survive, get around that. Those individuals who you say, what do I do when the police, now they get arrested, now 9 out of 10 times, this is what the problem is. You have someone that's trying to cooperate with the officer, but the officer is not de-escalating. He's continuing, get your hands against the wall, shut up. He's continuing to be belligerent. He continuing to be overpowering, establish his power. Now, when the police write the police report, he's not going to write himself as the villain. He's not going to say, oh, I was being an asshole. How could have, he was cooperating. He's trying to put his hands behind his back, lay on the ground in a backflip. But the police report is not going to say that. The police report is going to say, this guy resisted arrest, I had to do this to subdue him. He's going to write, you as this person's the villain and him is the hero. When this report gets to the next stage, to the prosecutor office, the prosecutor is going to take it on face value. Well, he's a law officer of the law. God, I'm not challenging this. He wrote this. This happened. Why would he lie? He don't lie. That's what Caesar said. Oh, those innocent, those good men, they would never do that. They're good men in the court. As soon as he walked out the door, they stabbed all the men and stabbed in the back, killed them. Same thing he said. The same thing prosecutors said. Oh, those good men, they're not going to write any false report. They send these false reports to a grand jury. Now, this is one of the most unfair, imbalanced process in the criminal justice